Kitty.
And I'm Jennifer.
And we're the O'Neill sisters, and we're going to show you how to make a beautiful candle embedded with sea glass.
This kind of candle is made using a special two-part embedding mold set made by Yaley. And Yaley also has all of the wax you need, the color, and the scent, and the wick.
We're going to show you everything you need to know, including how to make the core candle using the inner mold. We'll show you how to wick that, and we'll show you how to place the core candle in the outer mold and add the sea glass.
Plus, we're going to show you a special trick using a heat gun that'll help reveal the sea glass for the best results.
Let's get started.
To make this candle, you need an embedding mold set. One of the molds is 4 inches and the other is 3 inches. You need premium candle wax for pillars. And to go with that candle wax, we have a bleached wick that's large, and we'll tell you how we determine the size later. We're going to use an additive in our candle wax to keep it nice and clear. It's called translucent crystal additive. To scent our candle, we're going to use coconut lime verbena candle scent. To tint our candle wax, a light kind of aqua blue, we're going to use aqua candle dye. And finally, we're going to use sea glass in our candle. Here are the other supplies you'll need: a heat gun, cutting board, a chisel and hammer, a saucepan with a pouring spout, candle making thermometer, a chopstick, potato peeler, a skewer, pencil, scissors, a white index card, a kitchen scale, a tablespoon, masking tape, mold sealer, and oven mitts.
So the first thing that we want to do is wick the mold, the pillar mold, and we're going to wick the littler one, the 3-inch diameter inside candle is the one that's going to get the wick.
And you can see that we've put masking tape pieces all the way around the edge of our mold, and that's because this edge can be pretty sharp. We don't want to get anybody to get hurt.
But we didn't put too much because we don't want it to dip down into where the wax is. So you can see it's just a little bit there. So we're going to start by feeding the wick into this tiny hole in the bottom of the mold.
And we are using a large wick. And what we did was measure the diameter of our mold to figure out what size wick to use. And it said right on the packaging, for a 3-inch diameter mold, you want to use a large wick. So that's how we figured that out.
Sorry, I'm making a ton of noise.
That's
okay,
right.
So I've got a tail here sticking out the bottom, and it's going to be, we're going to leave about 3 inches of tail there. And then what we do with that is we're going to coil it up and seal it with mold sealer, which Jennifer has over here.
This is our mold sealer, and I'm going to just pull a little bit off here. And I'm going to mush it in my hands. It's kind of like clay, to soften it a little bit like that. Hopefully that's enough.
So I just coiled that up so it's kind of tidy, so it'll be easier to put the clay on top of that.
So I'm going to put the clay right on top. I might need a little bit more, but I'm going to start by just pressing it down over the sides of that coiled wick. And if it's not enough, I'm going to add a little more, because the last thing you want is any of your hot wax to come pouring out of the bottom.
You go pouring the wax into the mold, and if it's not sealed, this tiny little hole, you just have an empty mold and a table full of hot wax.
We don't want that to happen. So you can see that's nice and covered and secure.
Yes,
and I've stretched it out a little bit, so that it's nice and secure.
That looks good and sealed there. So that little wick is all underneath there. Now we're ready to do the top part here. And what we've got is the wick coming straight up through the center. And if we left it like this, it would lean over to the side. And then when we pour in the wax, we would have a wick leaning to the side. And we don't want that. We want the wick to be in the center.
And we'll center it several times throughout this process.
We'll keep repositioning it.
Yep.
But to do that, what we're going to do is tie it up to a pencil.
Very good.
So, and that's pretty taut so that it's not slacking inside there. And then we can trim the end off, but I don't want to trim it too close because it'll fall into the wax. So I'm going to trim it out here. We'll trim it again later too.
But that way, see, this will hang over the side and not end up dipping into the top of our wax. We're ready to melt our wax, and what we did was we went ahead and chopped up the wax brick into smaller pieces using a hammer and a chisel, because they just melt faster if it's in smaller pieces.
And we decided that we should melt 2 pounds of wax because we need enough wax to fill the entire both molds together at the same time. That's the core candle plus the outer edge. So that's the volume of the bigger mold. And the package said 25 ounces. We want a little extra in case we spill some and who knows what. So we're doing 32 ounces or 2 blocks of wax. And then we're just going to melt them for as long as it takes.
And we're just going to put them in this saucepan. And again, the saucepan has a little pouring spout.
You want the pouring spout.
You'll see why we need that later.
Yes. And as we melt this, we're going to keep an eye on the thermometer here. This is our candle thermometer, and it's going to tell us once it all gets liquid, it looks the same whether it's at 185 degrees or if it gets up into dangerous temperatures above 250 or something. So we want it to melt to 210.
You don't want it to catch fire.
This is dangerous stuff. It's flammable. That's why you can make a candle out of it.
Yep.
So we're going to keep an eye on it. We're going to keep an eye on the thermometer, and we're not going to let it get hotter than 210. And that's when we'll be ready to add the translucent crystals,
Yep.
the color, and the scent.
So our wax is melted, and it means we're ready to add our additive.
We got it up to 210, and we used the candle thermometer the whole time to make sure it didn't get too hot.
It's very important. We're going to add 1 tablespoon of our translucent additive. That'll keep the wax nice and crystal clear.
Clear, so we can see our embedments when we pour that part.
We'll just let that melt.
And that's why it needed to get up to 210, because the additive melts at 210, and if we weren't that hot, it would sit in there just as little crystals instead of melting. Totally melted.
Great.
Now we're ready to add the scent, and we like to add the scent before we add the color in case there's any color in the scent.
Yes, it's a good little tip. So this is our coconut lime verbena, and we're going to add 1 tablespoon of the scent.
We just chose that because it was beachy.
Yeah. Oh, it smells great.
So just stir that around.
Perfect.
Chopstick. And actually, why don't you stir?
Absolutely.
And I will do the color. And this is a candle dye block. And you want to use this because it's wax based, so it will work with our wax. And what I'm going to do is shave off a couple curls. We want to put a little bit in, it's aqua color, but we don't want our candle to be opaque. We want to see our embedments.
Right, so it's best to start with just a little bit, and you can always add more.
So I'm just going to add a couple curls. These are like little carrot curls.
And I'll stir them in, and then we can test the color.
And I can see that it could take all of these probably.
Yeah, I think so.
And then the way we test it is once it's all in there,
we're close. Here we go.
We're going to drip a couple of drips onto a white index card. Let it cool. And then see what color it is.
Does it look like it could use a little
I think
more?
it could use a little bit
Yeah.
more. It doesn't look like there's much color in it.
No. And because our sea glass is aqua and green, like Kitty said, you don't want to add so much color that you lose the joy and beauty of that sea glass.
Yeah, we don't want it to disappear.
And if you add too much color now, you can't go back.
Right.
So
We do.
it's always best to just add a little and then test and test and test.
We want it to look sort of like pool water,
Yeah.
like Caribbean waters, where you can still see through it.
It's pretty
That looks
melted.
better.
Okay, let's see what
I'm
that
going to
looks
use
like.
a fresh card for this.
Okay.
Drip some on there, maybe a little bit more.
How's that?
I kind of want it to cool so I can see what the color's really going to look like.
Yeah, that's a good idea. You can just blow on it. Perfect.
It smells like the beach.
Totally. It's like that Hawaiian tropic.
Yeah. So there's not very much color, but it is translucent.
Yeah, I think it's maybe one
Just
little,
a little bit
tiny
more.
bit more, and then that'll be good.
So there's not really a math for this, how many curls to do,
No.
because your potato peeler or carrot curler is going to be different. The size of your curl is going to be different.
That's
so you're
right.
going to have to just test it.
Plus, the different colors have sort of different.
That's true. Like the red is very intense.
Oh yeah. That looks melted.
Okay, let me get a fresh white index card here, and we'll try that again. I'm starting to see some color there.
Oh yeah. It's looking good. It's beautiful in the pot.
The pot looks fantastic. Looks like Caribbean waters.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that this is all filled with, the wax is melted, translucent crystals,
Yep.
we have the scent in there, we have the color. That means we're ready to pour our core mold.
We're ready to pour our core candle, but first we placed our mold on a cookie sheet that we covered with aluminum foil, and that's just in case there are any spills.
Yes, and so we've got our melted wax all set here, And this is why we wanted the pouring spout on the pot. I'm just going to fill up this core mold.
And Kitty's just going to pour slowly, and she can pour right over the wick. Don't worry about pouring it over the wick. And she's just going to pour right up to that tape line. You want it pretty high, but you don't want the tape, the wax touching the tape.
And we've got extra wax left over, and that's because we have an outer mold also. So we're just going to save this to the side.
So now we're going to center our wick to make sure it's nice and centered there. And then we're going to let this cool for 1 hour, and then we've got one more step for this core mold.
When you're making a pillar candle in a mold like this, after you've poured your wax in, you need to wait an hour and check on the candle. And the reason is that wax shrinks as it cools, and a divot may form in the top of your candle, which we have here. And you also may have holes, gaps inside, air pockets that have formed inside the candle. And we need to refill the candle. It's called filling the well. And to do that, we need to poke some holes in there.
So I've got a skewer. This is what your wooden skewer is for. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to poke about 4 or 5 holes directly through the top of the candle all the way down to the bottom. And I'm doing that on all 3 sides here. I'm going to do it on all 4 sides actually.
There you go.
All the way there.
And the reason you need to do this is if an air pocket is inside your candle when it's cooled and you go to burn that candle, when the wick gets to a gap in the wax, it's going to stop burning.
That's right.
It needs the candle wax next to the wick to burn.
And you can actually see some of the wax came up, so I can see some air bubbles coming up too.
There you go. So now I've got the wax here from before, leftover wax, reheated, and I'm going to pour it in so that it goes down inside and fills any gaps, and also so it fills up that well.
And what Kitty's going to do is she's going to pour the wax just up to, not quite up to the original fill line.
It's okay if I pour onto the wick.
Yes, it's okay to pour on the wick, and we're pouring on a cookie sheet that's covered in foil, and that's so if there are any drips, which there usually are for this process, It's fine. But you can see now this is filled up not past the original fill line, because the shrinkage that happens with the candle wax, it causes a gap to form between the mold and the candle. So if you fill it up too high, you'll get like run lines on the outside of your candle, and it looks icky.
So now that's going to need to cool. We're going to wait about an hour and check on it again. If another divot has formed, we'll do this one more time. Otherwise, we'll wait 12 hours. We're going to let that candle cool completely before we're ready to unmold this pillar candle. We let our candle cool, and now we're ready to unmold it.
So the first thing we need to do is remove our pencil. It was holding our wick up nice and tight, keeping it centered. Just slide that out. It's got a little bit of wax on it from when we poured the candle, but that's fine. There we go.
And then you remember we put the mold sealer underneath that it kept the wax from pouring out at the bottom. So we just need to pull that. And we've got a really long wick here.
That's good. We'll need that.
Yes.
So now we're ready to flip this guy over. Ooh, and I can feel it's coming out already. Yes. Sometimes it helps to
kind of
straighten that.
Yeah.
There we go. Pull that out.
Oh, pretty. So remember with a mold, the top is the bottom. So the side that we poked that's not as pretty, that's going to be in the bottom of our candle when we're done. This is the top, and it looks gorgeous.
It looks fantastic.
And now all we need to do is cut the wick. Remember, you want to cut the wick on the bad side.
Right, not the smooth, beautiful side, but the icky side.
And we can cut that flush because that's going to go into the outer mold to make our embedded candle.
That looks great. We're ready to place our core candle into our outer mold and then place our embedments around the sides. But before we get started, it's important to make sure that the bottom is level.
So to make sure the bottom of the core candle was level, we set it in a heated pan, held it by the wick, and we used a level and just melted a little bit off the bottom so it's nice and level now. And we'll center it in the outer mold here.
That looks great. And you can just sort of eyeball it, and it looks like we've got about an inch all the way around.
Right.
That's perfect for our embedments, but before we get started with the embedments,
we have to tie up the wick.
We've got our magic pencil back here. So again, we're just tying up the wick to keep it out of the wax when we pour our hot wax in later.
And you remember when we made the core candle, we said to leave a really long piece in the bottom, even though you had to coil that whole thing up and put mold sealer over it. The reason was we need to be able to tie that up on this end. So we're glad we had a lot of wick on this end.
And we'll recenter it after we put in our embedments, but now we're ready to put in our sea glass.
This is the fun part.
It is. I'm going to give you a handful here. There we go.
And for this, it's not really magic. You just drop the pieces in the side, between the outer mold and the inside core candle.
We got this sea glass at the dollar store. They also carry it at craft stores, so it's pretty easy to find.
And we tested pieces to make sure they would fit in the space. If you get some sea glass and you have pieces that don't fit, you can just save those for another project. So we'll just keep filling this up all the way to the level, the top of our core candle, and then we'll be ready to fill it with wax.
We're ready to pour our wax.
But before we do, we want to make sure that we seal the hole up that's in the bottom of the mold, because even though there's no wick, there's still a hole there. So we put mold sealer on that. We remelted our wax, and now we're just going to pour it in.
And Kitty's just going to pour directly over that core candle that's in there already. It's fine to get the wax on top because we actually want the wax to cover the top of that core candle so that it kind of melds together and creates one unified look.
And we covered our surface as before with foil, and good thing because I spilled a little bit, but that's okay.
And spilling is fine. That's why we always have a handy
And we've got one little piece of sea glass that's sticking up there. I'm just going to use the thermometer here and just poke it down so it doesn't poke out of the top of our candle.
That's a good idea.
And then we're going to leave this on a level surface. We have our little level here. And we're going to let it cool for an hour. We're going to check back on it. If we've got some craters or holes that have formed because the wax is shrinking, we'll remelt the wax and we'll top that off.
We let our candle cool for an hour and we checked back on it, and we had a little bit of a divot around where we poured the wax over the sea glass. So we went ahead and we reheated the wax and poured it over the top just to make it even.
Yes, and it might leave some little marks on top, so the top of your candle doesn't look perfect. So we're going to show you a trick for that. You can smooth the top of your candle with a heat tool. This is a little heat gun. And we're going to melt the top 1/4 inch of the wax with the heat gun.
And that's going to make that surface nice and smooth.
Smells good when you heat the wax up. And so you don't need to heat it up too much, just maybe the top 1/4 inch, but it will level everything off.
And the heat gun we just got at the craft store. It's like what, $10, something like that?
Yeah, it wasn't very expensive. And we use it for other things too.
Yeah. Great. Now we're just going to let that rest on a level surface until it's completely cool, and then we'll be ready to unmold.
We let our candle cool completely, and now it's time to unmold it.
The first thing we need to do is remove our pencil, and it might have a little bit of wax on it, but you can just sort of wiggle it out like that.
Sure.
And then we're going to untie our wick. And then if you remember, we put some mold sealer on the bottom of our candle.
Because there's a little hole under there.
Yeah, and you don't want your wax to spill out, so I'm just going to remove
the hole's there because this is a regular pillar mold. If you want to reuse it, you can make a big pillar in it.
Yeah, it's
Put the
nice.
wick through there.
You get like a 2-for-1 or 3
extra,
for
extra candles you can make from this set. Now to unmold it, we're going to just let it slide out, and you can tell kind of right away whether it's ready to come out or not. And I'm just going to pull on the wick a little bit. If yours wants to stay in the mold, it's not coming out, you can put it in the fridge for 10 minutes, which is what we're going to do. So we put our candle in the refrigerator for 10 minutes, and that helps it shrink up a little bit, and so it'll pull away from the sides of the mold. And now I can feel it starting to come out, and I'm just giving it a little assist by tugging gently.
You definitely don't want to squeeze your mold because you don't want to create any dents in it.
Yeah.
Because they'll show up in candles later.
Yeah, they won't slide in and out evenly. Yeah. This is the magic part. Are you ready?
Yay!
Wow.
Oh, that looks amazing.
That is beautiful.
And now you could leave your candle just like this if you like how it looks, but we want to show you a little trick to kind of show off the sea glass a little better. And that's by using
the heat gun again, yeah.
So we're going to turn it on. And then we're just going to heat the sides a little bit, kind of starting at the top. You can see it's melting it already. This is going to help make the top match up with the rest of the candle too, where you see where we refilled it a little bit. And that'll hide that a little bit too. You can see it's already starting to reveal the sea glass.
And then what you want to do is remove a little bit of the wax, just enough to reveal some of the sea glass, but you don't want to remove too much because the sea glass pieces will start falling out. We're just melting a little bit at the top edge too, where you can kind of see that there's wax on top that we melted. We just want to make it look more like one unified candle. We're just going to keep going and melt a little bit of the wax away all the way around the candle. So we finished melting the wax, and it's amazing how that sea glass looks when you reveal it by melting the wax away.
It's so gorgeous.
If your bottom edge of your candle is a little bit crooked because of the melted wax at the bottom, you can use that leveling trick again just to make it nice and tidy.
Now we just need to trim the wick.
Yes, and we always trim the wick to 1/4 inch.
That's good for safety.
Yes.
Kind of anytime you burn a candle, you want to trim it back down to 1/4 of an inch.
And that looks amazing.
We love making these embedded candles. We've done one with seashells
Yep.
before, and it turned out so pretty. And we've seen them done with pressed flowers too. They always turn out gorgeous.
And they make great gifts, and no one will believe you made it yourself.